Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, this film does exactly what a good sequel does. It continues the story and progresses the characters so that they take them to the next level in terms of their character arcs. And this movie does that beautifully. Like, once again, James Gunn's coming back to direct and came back to direct and write this film. And yeah, once again, here's a shocker for you. I love this movie. I think it just goes to say, I mean, the part, how do I even, so this is what one thing I do like about this movie is that once again, it feels very different. It feels separated from the MCU. It doesn't feel like it's forced or needs to have to tie into the Avengers or the other films. It really is, these are the Guardians and they're doing their own thing and it works beautifully. And I love the movie for doing that. Like, it doesn't feel like it has to in any way tie in. It just feels natural. And then even the soundtrack for this film is great as well. I love it. Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. What was the other one? Mr. Blue Sky was a good one. Wham Bam by Silver, that's another great one. Southern Nights by Glenn Campbell. They got a lot of great ones in this movie. And what I also love about the song choices, just like the first Guardians film, it feels natural. The songs don't feel like we're just going to put some popular pop songs, because these are the popular ones that will make money. These feel like songs that that are good songs, but they are probably not as popular now as they were when they were released. And I admire James Gunn for doing that. I admire him for truly picking songs not based on popularity or recognition, but based on, does it fit the scene? Does it fit the story? A great example is of Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. That's a great song, and it works because this song itself is about the sea and about the sailor who left her for the sea, left the girl of her dreams for the sea. And it ties into the story because the story focuses on how Star-Lord and his father in this movie, played by Kurt Russell, who is a perfect casting choice, but they're both the sailor, and the ocean is space for them. And you see that analogy play out really well. And that's just one example of how a song builds on it's emotionally connects with it, but it also logically connects with the movie. And so the soundtrack is phenomenal. All the actually, like, Kurt Russell as Ego, or Star-Lord's dad, is perfect casting. Like, it's like, the best way to explain it is, if you had to cast Star-Lord in the 80s, if you were making this film in the 80s, who would you cast Star-Lord? It would be Kurt Russell. That would be the perfect choice. And so seeing him in a weird movie like this, playing as Star-Lord's dad, it's phenomenal, and it works, and it's great. And it works because he plays it in a very, not just a simply evil villainous kind of role, but first he comes off as like a good guy, and then you see later on throughout the story that he's actually he's terrible because he wants to take over other planets. And originally it just seems like he wants to share this planet with Peter, and then with Peter Quill, and then he realizes and then we realize throughout the story that he wants to take over the universe. But the way it all feels natural because he plays it in a very fun dad kind of way. So it's very hilarious and different in that way. And it's a very interesting Marvel villain too. Once again, that's why I'm okay when Marvel has origin stories and their villains are kind of one note, because then when they make sequels like the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and even Age of Ultron, I'll give this, Avengers Age of Ultron, I'll give them. I mean, Loki was the better villain, but like, these sequels, they put in the effort to give you interesting villains that are thought-provoking and engaging. And that's why I feel like the sequels in these film series are better than the original, because they continue the story. They can progress these characters. It's not just another sequel with them doing stuff and fighting and action-packed. You see them progress in terms of how they grow. You know, the first Guardians film was about them about them meeting each other and becoming a family. And the second Guardians film can best be described as the Guardians growing together as a family. They fight each other, they have conflict. There's a scene when Rocket Raccoon and Star-Lord are fighting over who gets to control the ship when they're being chased by an army, by an army of these gold aliens. And these gold people, this race of gold beings. And they're just having their banter, their banter. Rocket Raccoon and Star Lord fighting over who is the better pilot, who can control the ship while they're escaping that army, and it's just great moments. There's also a fantastic moment between Gamora and Nebula when they're just first that full fight sequence is phenomenal when Nebula just comes to Ego's planet and Gamora just sitting, and then she sees Nebula just flying that ship and just trying to blast her and kill her. And then Gamora just holds a big gun when Nebula's down and starts firing back at her. And it's just a great fight sequence. But then it ends with that realization that Nebula hates Gamora because of how Gamora would always win and would always beat her in combat, and Nebula just wanted to assist her. And then Gamora realizes how cruel she's been and never thinking about her well-being. So you see that emotional arc of at first they hate each other, but then by the end of this movie they have some sense of a respect for each other and love for each other. And again, that's what makes this movie great, is they progress these characters. Yondu, in my opinion, has the best character arc in this entire movie. I mean, he starts off as a character who has that sense of rejection, that sense of, how to best explain it. He has regret because he's made some bad choices. And the movie sort of follows this character arc of him finally doing the right thing at the end of the movie. And spoiler alert, he dies at the end, but his death is so beautifully, it's like the way he's just in space and he's freezing up, and Star-Lord's just like crying and freaking out because that was his real father figure, was Yondu, and he's dying right in front of him, and it's just emotional. And then the movie just ends with a funeral for Yondu, and it's just beautiful. And then you see Rocket Raccoon's one tear rolling down his face, and that's how they end the movie, and it's beautiful. I love the way they tell the story, and that feels so genuine and sincere. And then another thing is, once again, the visuals are phenomenal. I mean, the beauty of a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy is that there's lots of CGI used, but the beauty of these kinds of films is the CGI, you don't have to worry about making a film look real. You just have to make it look good. And they embrace that. They embrace the weird, because it's fake, but it's not fake in the sense where the CGI is bad. It's fake because there's all these crazy space stuff, these other worlds, and these weird space kind of creatures, and these spaceships and all this stuff. But it all works and feels naturally. It never feels like the live action characters, like Peter Quill, like the actors in the CGI world. It never feels weird or out of place. It feels so smooth and transient, the way they're able to mesh this weird out there CGI with the live action people. And it's just a testament to how far we've gone with CGI, to where we can do that and how it feels natural. And yeah, this movie has so much creativity like that. This movie definitely also, with the soundtrack, it embraces the 80s vibe. This is a great film if you're someone who's into like classic 80s science fiction B-movie kind of style, and this movie embraces it with its comedy, with its action. There's a great scene where what is the name of that? So there's a species that are all in gold, and they're like this, they're very proper, they're very sophisticated, they're all about being perfect in every single way. And what's funny is that they're sending an army out to go after the Guardians because Rocket stole their batteries. And it is as funny as it sounds. It is Actually, in this case, yeah, very funny. But so they send that army out to go after the Guardians, and the way they portray it is hilarious because the ships themselves are in space and they're going after the Guardian ship, but they control it via remote satellite from their planet. But the way they control it is equivalent to that of an 80s arcade game. And that's why you feel the 80s vibe. Even the way they treat it. Like you'll have like a lot of these ships going down and you'll have one person who's actually still alive flying that ship and he's controlling it from there, and all the other people are like gathering around that one pilot who's remote controlling that ship that's going after the Guardian. They're like, "Come on, you can do this, man." And it's just like when you're in an 80s arcade and you have that one guy who's like a really good at a game and all the other kids are like following along. He's like, yeah, you can do it. So it really embraces the 80s of nature, and it works. It's great. I like how, because it does that, this movie feels so different. Like, not only does it just feel different from the MCU overall, but it just feels like a different kind of movie that we don't see often in theaters. Like, it doesn't feel generic or just like another summer blockbuster. It really feels like its own thing, and it embraces what it is. And it's because you have a great writer and director like James Gunn, who has a voice and a very weird, wacky, but fun, sincere, genuine voice. And you see it come out of this movie and why it's so beloved and why the Guardians are so popular and successful.